My name's Tim, and I work at Hillcrest Chapel, and I want to talk about the Imago Dei. The Imago Dei is Latin for the image of God. This is the belief that men and women are made in the image of God, that somehow they reflect the image of God. They're in the Imago Dei. Now, what exactly does this mean? Traditionally, this belief comes out of Genesis 1:27 is the first place where we get this idea mentioned. I'll just read this. Genesis 1:27. So God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So God creates man and woman in his image, in his likeness, in the Imago Dei. And Christians over the centuries have taken this that Christians reflect the image of God in at least three important senses. I'm going to list these out for you. The first sense is what you might call substantive. That the humans in their substance, in their makeup, reflect the image of God, reflect who God is. And so this would be things like creativity, that's supposed to be a light bulb. Creativity, intelligence, that's a brain, and morality or ethics, and there's our heart. So for the substantive idea, you would say, okay, look, this reference to the image of God happens in Genesis 1:27. So let's look at what came before that, the first 26 verses of Genesis, to understand what the image of God means. And when you look at what God was doing in those first 26 verses of the book of Genesis, you see him exercising intelligence, exercising creativity, and doing this in a way that is morally good, forming this new creation. That men and women in their substance and their makeup are the image of God because they have these same essences in them. So that's the first way that Christians have talked about the image of God. The second way is relationship. The Christians have said humans are made in the image of God in their capacity for relationship. Christians understand God not to be just some single monolithic entity, but that God is triune, that God is community. The Father, Son, the Spirit. It is a self-giving community. And that so that in God's very nature, relationship is part of who God is. It is a irreducible part. Community relationship is an irreducible part of who God is. And so for humankind to be made in God's image means that capacity for relationship is part of who they are. And so we see in Genesis 1:27, God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. That even in this first verse, you get this, it's not just he created a human, but he created man and woman. He created these two beings who are different and yet made to be in relationship with one another. So that in our capacity for relationship, capacity for relationship, we reflect who God is. And I don't just mean relationships solely between one man and one woman, but in all relationships with others who are different from us. Friendships, family, marriages, all these different kinds of relationships. When we engage in community, we are reflecting who God is. The third sense The third way that humans reflect who God is, the Imago Dei, is in the functional sense. That humans represent, we function as God's representatives, as princes and princesses under the great king here on earth. That we function instead. So, God creates man and woman, and He sets them in the garden to care and protect it, to garden it, to steward it. That He gives them a function to do, a responsibility, and that man and woman are to represent God's reign and rule in this creation. It's interesting in the ancient Near East when someone in the ancient Near East is building a temple. You'd construct a temple. You'd build your walls. Build your walls of the temple. Of course, you got to have your roof of the temple. You'd start with the foundation of the temple. You get this whole temple built, and the last thing that you would put in the temple. The last thing that you'd put in the temple would be the image of the god. That's the last thing. That's how you complete the temple. You put the image of the idol of the god in the center of the temple, and then that image or idol of the god represents or reflects the character of God in the temple. And so in Genesis 1 and 2, we see the God of the universe creates everything. He creates the earth and all that's in it. And He puts animals and plants and trees in it. He creates the sky and the sun and the moon and the stars. And then the last thing that God puts in His creation is man and woman, His image in the center of creation, to represent Him to creation, to reflect His character, His will to creation. And so, in this third sense, this functional sense, that we function as God's representatives here in His creation. Now, theologians talk about the Imago Dei in these three senses, and some theologians would emphasize one over the other. Some would say all three are present, but I think all three. I think you can clearly argue for all three from Scripture. Now, just a little snippet of where things go from here. So, man and woman are created in the image of God. And what happens then when man and woman disobey God, this image is somehow marred or cracked or scarred. It's not lost. It's not gone, but it's not fully present. Clearly, we no longer manifest relationships. We no longer represent God's character as fully as we were designed to. But it's not lost, because we see here, even in Genesis 9:6, after the fall, after Adam and Eve disobey God and are kicked out of the garden, that God says, "Whoever sheds human blood, by the humans shall their blood be shed." And catch this next part. "For in the image of God has God made humankind." And so God reaffirms the Imago Dei in humans after the fall. And so it's still present in humans. While cracked, marred, scarred, it's still there. And in fact, you might say the story of redemption for human beings is the story of they're having the Imago Dei fully restored. That Jesus of Nazareth, the God-man, comes fully reflecting the character of God. Jesus has he represents the image of God in its fullest and most complete sense. And that he offers, as we are united with him, as we receive his forgiveness and as he remakes us, he reforms the image of God, restores it, heals the crack, takes away the scar, wipes off the mar, and so that the image of God in us can be fully restored. In many ways, that is the story of redemption in Scripture.